One.
Good afternoon, participants. My presentation this afternoon is titled A Nuanced Approach to Fertility Management of Cocoa Farms in Trinidad, and I am presenting on behalf of the other co-authors, Marvin, Amrita, and Prof. Maharaj. The major challenge facing our cocoa industry in Trinidad at this point in time is one of very low national cocoa production. At this point in time, it is just around 400 metric tons. A lot of this is so because of the fact that we experience very low field productivity, which can range from 80 kilograms per hectare to up to 600 kilograms per hectare. There is indeed the potential to increase productivity. As we see here, by doing good agricultural practices, productivity can be increased. At this point in time, we have farmers achieving 600 kilograms per hectare simply because they are doing things in addition to just weed control, which used to be the normal thing of the past. Now farmers are pruning their fields, they are taking care of their drainage, their shade management is good, they are controlling pests and diseases. And as a result, they have been able to move from the lower scale up to the mediocre level of 600 kilograms per hectare. But certainly the potential exists to cross 1,000 kilograms per hectare. And to do this, what we are realizing now is that soil fertility management and crop nutrition is critical to take us into the 1,000 kilogram hectare mark. In addition to the soil fertility management, we also need to look closely at genetic improvements, even working more on the varieties that we have, getting in probably some more self-compatibility, and being able to produce much more superior planting material for the farmers to actually grow. Now, during the course of the IMPACTT project, which was completed in February 2020, in the latter 18 months of it, a major activity took place, which was really to investigate soil fertility across the 6 agroecological zones which were identified for the project. And these 6 agricultural ecological zones, they actually cover 43 cocoa growing communities. So this major study was undertaken, and basically it involved the testing of soil fertility and other things over 172 farms. So out of this, in fact, this is a map here showing the distribution of the cocoa farms which were sampled within the 6 agroecological zones. So the 172 farms are represented here. And this is an example of the soil fertility result which was generated from this project. So the 172 of these results constituted a significant body of scientific data which form the foundation really for this entire work that I'm presenting here today. As you can see, it is very detailed in terms of its analysis, covering all of the nutrients and other factors such as pH, organic matter, cation exchange capacity, and so on. So what is this nuanced approach all about? And I will deal with it basically in via 6 different steps here. So firstly, what we did is that we took all those soil test results and we prepared a compendium of the nutrient analysis. And the nutrient analysis covered the primary nutrients, like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash, the secondary nutrients like calcium, magnesium, all of the important micronutrients for the cocoa crop: boron, zinc, manganese, copper, iron, and other soil factors, as you mentioned previously. Secondly, the nutrient availability status was identified as either low, optimum, or high, and soil factors were indicated as satisfactory or not in the compendium. So this is an example of the compendia here. As you would see, it is very detailed and contains a lot of information. So the example that you are looking at in front of me is for the agroecological zone of the central northern range. And in this AEZ, you have 5 important cocoa growing communities. So Aripo, Brazo Seco, Lopino, San Joseph, and Santa Cruz. So all of the information that you are seeing here now is pertained specifically to the individual growing communities. And you would see 19 columns of information here, starting from your average pH, your cation exchange capacity, your organic matter. The soil series would have been detailed for each one of these growing communities: the soil texture, the relief, that is the slope of the area in general, the carbon nitrogen ratio, the drainage properties of the soil, and then the very specific soil test values obtained from the sampling. And so you have for nitrogen, phosphorus, potash coming down the line. At the very end, we then determine some of the important conditions, soil conditions, which exist. So what you would see here really is a situation where all of the primary nutrients, the N, the P, and the K, are of a low status, while you had magnesium, one of the secondary nutrients, also low in status. And you had a lot of boron deficiency in terms of your trace elements. You also had problems with low CEC values and a couple cases where the pH was also low. So this is the kind of information database that was developed from the soil test results. So moving on again, this is another example here of another AEZ, which is called the Eastern Lowlands. And in this you have six major cocoa growing communities. Again, you have Ecclesville, Poole, Beach, Charuma, Rio Claro, Brothers Road. And again, the same type of results are presented for these areas. When you look at this Eastern Lowlands being one of the more significant cocoa growing AEZ in the country, you see basically soils here with much better improved soils here. 3 of them here in 3 of the major areas, like in Ecclesville, Poole, and Rio Claro, you're seeing very good pH values, very good CEC values, and in terms of the nutrients, again, you're seeing very low nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash values. And similarly with magnesium to some extent also. Moving on again, what I'm going to present now is the distribution of the different fertility items based on how they were marked for Trinidad. So the first one here is the distribution of the pH status. And basically, if you look at the legend here, you would see all your strongly acidic soils represented in areas represented in red. Those that are moderately acidic are in pink, and those that are slightly acidic are in green. So ideally for cocoa, you're looking at pH values of between 5.5 and 6.5. And it is only in certain of the areas of Trinidad, particularly the western flank or central Trinidad, where you're seeing a lot of green. So this is like in the Grand Couva, Tortuga area. Then you see in areas of it in Ecclesville, Pool and Rio Claro also, and certain areas in the northern range. The other areas, really, there is a lot of work to be done to really improve the status of the pH of these areas. When you look at the story with potassium fertility, you're really seeing all red. So what this basically shows is potassium is critically low in all of the growing areas of Trinidad, and you would see the leaf symptoms shown up on the screen. So, and it's very common to really go in cocoa fields and you would see the leaves of the tree showing these types of symptoms, indicating really that the plant's really struggling to obtain potassium. So this is very critical. The nitrogen fertility is similar to the potash fertility, in that I don't have, I'm not going to show you a map of nitrogen, but it is the same. It is the same red right through, very critically low. Right, the phosphorus one is somewhat better, but not all that better really. Again, you have only one of the AEZ, which is in the northeastern peninsula, where you have, and this is in the northeast of the country, where in areas like Matura, Matla, Grand Riviere, and so on, where you tend to have optimum levels of phosphorus. And you do have patches of it in other areas like Tamana, and then some areas in the southwest like Cedrus and Erin and so on. But generally speaking, in all other areas, phosphorus is either critical or below critical, as you would see in pink and red. And again, there is a leaf showing these symptoms of phosphorus deficiency. When we look at magnesium as a critical secondary nutrient, again we see in some areas where it is optimum in green, and again this would be the areas, the cocoa growing communities in central Trinidad in the western flank, again Vancouver, Tortuga, those areas of Tabaqui, some areas in Ecclesville and Pool. While all the other areas you see it either red or blue, indicating again critical or below critical deficiency. The boron again, again you're seeing a lot of red here, red and pink, which is critical again or below critical. But you're also seeing a fair amount of green, which is optimum, and the green is represented more in the southeast areas, in the eastern lowland AEZs areas like Ecclesville, Rio Claro, Pool, Beach, and then up in the northern range again you're seeing some areas green again, indicating good boron status. So moving on again with the nuanced approach. So I've been compiled the compendium and so on. Recommendations are then made for improving the fertility status and correcting soil factors such as low pH. So this allowed us to develop an intervention matrix for all of the cocoa growing communities. And here we go with the intervention matrix, as you see. So again, it is developed along the line of the AEZ and the cocoa growing communities in the AEZ. And this one is less complicated in that it gives you your pH values, your CEC values, organic matter, whether it is low, optimum, or high. And similarly, so for all the other nutrients, low, optimum, or high. Then it goes to describe the conditions existing. So if we take the first one, for example, the western flank, you see conditions that exist there would be things like land slippage and erosion. So the area is somewhat prone to those things. You have a situation of free to imperfect drainage. You have dominantly clay loams in this area, and you do have low nutrient status, as you would see with your nitrogen and potash that was indicated earlier on, but you have optimum levels of calcium, you have low levels of magnesium, low levels of boron here. You have optimum levels of zinc. So, so in making recommendations really for this particular cocoa growing, for this western flank easy, you would see NPK fertilizers would be required with magnesium and boron supplementation. There must be erosion control practices put in place. So for example, a lot of protected storm and contour drains need to be installed really in this area here. When you look at the eastern flank, which is mainly like your major Tamana, Sangre Grande areas, you would see some of the conditions there a little different here, in that some of them are really flooded lowlands. You have mainly imperfect drainage. So drainage is critical in this area, having good drainage. Then you have again, then you have a lot of low pH and CECs, cation exchange capacity problems here. Here you would see recommendations for again, complete fertilizer package of NP and K with micronutrients, boron and zinc. You also see the need to correct pH by liming and using magnesium, and also to incorporate manures. Also rely on using manures and composted stuff, and also to have optimum drainage. And lastly, when you look at the eastern lowlands again, you see flooded lowlands. You see as the conditions. You see mainly imperfect and impeded drainage. You see low pH in beach, for example, and tableland. And again, you see recommendations for using NPK fertilizers and boron, using dolomitic limestone, which supplies both calcium and magnesium, using organic matter, and ensuring that your drainage is very optimum. Right, we again go on to the rest of the intervention matrix, which deals with the other three AZs, the Central Northern Range, the Northeastern Peninsula, and the Southern Range. And again, you see a similar type of description here of the conditions and the recommendations. The whole idea is that in some of these areas you do have specific issues, and the specific issues are identified and recommendations for correction are made. For example, if you take the Central Northern Range, you do have low pH in Brasso Seco areas and in the Akono areas, right? While in some of the other areas like Aripo and Blanchishes and so on, you have pretty good pH conditions existing. So you would find differences in terms of the approach that you would have to take in recommending corrective practices. If you look at the Northeastern Peninsula, for example, you see like in the areas of Kumana, Matlat, and so on, you see low pH dealing there with 5.3 values. You see zinc being low in Matlat. And you see a lot of low nutrient status. So again, recommendation of NPK fertilizers and use of boron and dolomitic limes and so on, stuff like that. The Southern Range is particularly critical here in that you tend to have a very low situation with pH here. You also have low CEC, and you basically have a lot of your nutrients also very low. So the only nutrient here that would be okay in some of these areas, in this particular Southern Range area, would be phosphorus. So generally, you would be using fertilizers with lots of nitrogen and potash and boron. Where P is low, obviously you would want to incorporate P. And then to be incorporated a lot of manures using dolomitic limestones and so on. And using mulches a lot in this area. This area is peculiar in that its rainfall is on the low side for cocoa, so that the use of mulches to conserve moisture is also very important. So this would give you an idea of the interventions required to correct the particular soil fertility problems which the various cocoa growing communities are experiencing. So if we continue with the nuanced approach again, and we looked at the fifth stage of it here. What took place next was really bringing in the Trinidad soil series map and overlaying it over all these cocoa growing community AEZ GIS maps, which I just showed you there. So this in fact would introduce a whole big amount of information to this system here. And the kind of information introduced here is the whole business of our soil texture, the relief, and the drainage. So this really gives you an opportunity now to examine all the information which we gathered during the IMPACTT project, and to utilize it in context to all of the information that you would find in the Trinidad soil series maps. And these maps give you a good indication of land capability. They give you a good indication of good cocoa soils, poor cocoa soils, average cocoa soils. So this was really a good opportunity in terms of being able to digitize the soil series map and have it accessible, and complementing these other digital maps which were created to make up this GIS. In fact, what you see in here really now is that all of this now is going to contribute towards a very comprehensive GIS for cocoa. This here is the digitized soil series map, and you would see what is demarcated in the red boundaries, and it really going to be all the AEZs and all of the cocoa growing communities. This soil series map actually represents 120 defined soil series, named soil series for Trinidad, which is quite a lot and very complex for a small island of Trinidad here. But as I say now, we can locate all of the cocoa farms on this soil series map in the context of the AEZ in which they belong to, in relation to the cocoa growing communities that they are located in relation to all the soil fertility maps which I just showed you there. So this actually is going to build up to really what would really be, as you see in here, layered maps and data information. And this could be a very important, what you would call a GIS-based site-specific management of cocoa. In this GIS system here, you would have all these layered maps with all of the accompanying data information. So you have maps showing the farms by location. You have the climate maps, particularly showing rainfall. You have all of the soil maps, the soil series which we just went through. You have all those, the soil series would give you a good indication of the physical properties of the soil. Then you would have all the chemical properties which we would have developed over the course of this IMPACTT project. Then there is the opportunity to bring in all the genetics of the cocoa varieties and so on. A flavor map has been developed over the course of this this IMPACTT project, which can also be another layer in this. And then we are working on layers which will give you indication of risks with respect to climate, with respect to pests, very importantly with respect to cadmium. So actually there is a cadmium map. And if you put the cadmium map alongside the pH map, there is a very strong relationship that you can see in that all the areas in Trinidad where the pH is pretty low, they tend to have cadmium being an issue in some of these areas. So that really in terms of correcting the pH, actually, you also would be correcting cadmium to a great extent. So this is really going to be a very valuable asset in terms of how in the future we can actually work in a very scientific way to manage cocoa farms. So the last aspect of this this nuanced approach to fertility management was the Cocoa Research Center participated with the together with the Cocoa Development Company and the Ministry of Agriculture in a number of activities using all of this information that we had gathered and developed over the course of the project. So we looked at 7 different things here. We started to source fertilizers, relevant fertilizers and limestone that we can recommend to farmers now, basically harping strongly on their being cadmium free. Then we went into calculating a lot of fertilizer requirements based on the soil test results. Then we initiated a lot of training for farmers. We had to also emphasize that in farmers getting into using fertilizers, there are a lot of pre and post practices which they must pay attention to within the ambit of this project too, and alongside the a lot of work which the Cocoa Development Company was doing at the time. We established and monitored 10 on-farm and 1 on-station fertilizer trial. We also prepared a bulletin on fertilizer use in cocoa, and we started a dialogue with Yara Company on formulations of fertilizer formulations and further technical assistance that they can provide us with. If I could just get into a little detail here of some of these aspects. Here are some of the different fertilizers which we were able to source, which are free of cadmium or very, very low in cadmium status. And these actually, a few of them actually are from Yara, and they really provided the basis for us going forward in terms of recommending the farmers fertilizers which can be used. So you see a whole lot of them. Also on this list here, you would see dolomitic limestone and poultry litter manure. There is a very big role in terms of improving soil fertility from using dolomitic limestone, which would provide necessary changes to the pH, improve the pH, and would also provide magnesium, which we see being a critical nutrient lacking in the soil. And then we also very mindful that it cannot only be fertilizers we want to use to improve soil fertility. We also want to use manures. And in Trinidad, we have an abundance of poultry litter manure, which can be used for this purpose. Again, we have to ensure that it is free of cadmium. Right, and so actually we developed a fertilizer regime, and then this is just a quick example of it here. I mean, if we were targeting like to getting 150 pounds of nitrogen, 100 pounds of phosphorus, and around 75 pounds of potash per year in soils which are depleted, this is the kind of requirement that you're looking at. 972 pounds of this formulation, this NPK formulation with magnesium and trace elements. You're looking at additional 200 pounds of another formulation with nitrogen, calcium, and boron. And then you're looking at 400 pounds of dolomite. So you're looking at a significant amount of fertilizer here, which must be incorporated in just 1 acre of land. And this 1 acre may have 400 cocoa trees. It may have 800 and something cocoa trees. You know, it all depends on the planting density. But it shows that it is really a large amount of fertilizer which is required at the start of here, simply because the fertility of the soil is very low. And in fact, the important challenge at the beginning really here is really to start to improve gradually the fertility of the soil. And then when that fertility really get up to appreciable good level, then we can really look at how we feed the crop directly based on its requirements. Right. So since we are trying to get the farmers to use fertilizers, we also have to guide them that you must do certain practices before you use fertilizer and after you use fertilizer. And this way you're going to get the maximum output of the fertilizer. Fertilizers are very expensive, and you really want the best results from the investment that you are going to make. So that before you fertilize, certainly you want to prune your trees, you want to make sure the drainage is adequate, you want to ensure the cocoa trees are receiving adequate sunlight to be able to use the fertilizer, and you want to correct acidic soils. Very importantly, and this has been an experience for us since we started the fertilized farms, or we had farms using fertilizers in 2019, that farmers must pay particular attention after fertilizing to ensure that all the unwanted chupons are removed and you practice good weed control. This is very important to reduce the competition for the fertilizer, which will really go into something unwanted. And we did see a lot of examples where the unwanted chupons were not removed, and you had trees with large numbers of very large chupons resulting from the from using all that fertilizer in the soil. So just some preliminary results from the on-farm trials, very preliminary. In fact, this was really in January month when we were able to collect the first rounds of harvest from the trees, and based on 4 on-farm trial sites in Otinola, Guaycotamana, Santa Cruz, and Rancho Quemado, when we analyze the number of pods per tree, we see that the fertilized trees actually did produce more pods, actually close to 11 point something pods per tree, as against the non-fertilized trees. Those were the control trees in the trial, which had around 9 pods per tree. But what was very visible from using the fertilizers really was the size of the pods. You could see the trees that were fertilized. The pod size was extremely large, and going along with that also going to be the bean size also getting larger. So this is very early times. Some of the way the trees were responding was rather exceptional. I didn't realize in such a short space of time from fertilizing them in October, November, to see results like that in January. And certainly the fertilizer, these trials really ought to run a course of 5 years, being fertilized every year, to really be able to determine the full and best effect of using fertilizers in cocoa. Okay, so I want to end off here and to really express our gratitude to the field staff of the Cocoa Development Company and the laboratory staff of the Cocoa Research Center. So thank you very much.